All right. Yeah. Woo, well, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving week or weekend, whatever you want to call it. Happy Thanksgiving. And I hope that you got to enjoy that turkey time, that football time, right? First time on a Friday. Like, hey, they finally gave us guys something on Friday, right? On that Black Friday. So that was fun. I hope you enjoyed and got to spend time with family and just got to spend a week of gratitude. I know that I have a lot to be thankful for. Yes, it is my first time speaking here on Sunday morning at Legacy, and I'm super excited for that. So I'm thankful that you're having me and for the honor to get to just give what I feel like God is giving me. And so I hope that he speaks through what I have to say to you today. So welcome wherever you are. And I would love to just maybe share just a little bit of what I'm thankful for. And maybe in the meantime, you probably don't know a lot about me. And maybe that'll help you kind of get to know who I am. So obviously, Peter said that I am the student pastor here at Legacy, one of them. And this is a picture of our students from camp this last summer. So I love my job. I'm thankful for my job. And that was an amazing week. I love camp. We love all of the amazing change that happens at camp, life change and healing that happens. And just shameless plug, the next big event that we have for 7th through 12th grade is this February. It's actually Super Bowl weekend. So before you go watch the Chiefs, you can, I'm kidding. I'm sorry, I had to, my bad. But we'll get your kids out Sunday morning, but that's gonna be a weekend retreat about 20 minutes away from here. It's an amazing, fun weekend. We had a blast last year. And I would love for you to be there if you're in 7th through 12th grade. Or if you don't come on Sunday nights, every Sunday, 6:15 to 8:15, come hang out. And it's just a place to be seen and known and know that Christ is Lord and us have a good time doing it. So we'd love, maybe not tonight because we're doing something a little different tonight, but next Sunday, if you haven't been, come check it out. We would love, love, love to have you. And so a little bit about me, I'm from Kansas, obviously. And most people are like, that's a boring state. But hey, that's where I'm from, and I am thankful for it. And so I'm also thankful for my family. So here's a little picture of my immediate family. This is my wife here, Peyton, and our 2 daughters. The oldest is Berkeley, the middle is Remy. And we have a third on the way coming this March. He will be here, and we're excited for that, yes. We like to tell people we're not crazy, we're just stupid. So... we're very blessed and we're very thankful for that. But my wife and I met, and we've been married about 5 years, and we moved to North Dallas. It'll be 5 years in January. And it was a crazy, fast, 5 years has gone by so fast. But we love, love, love our church. That's one of the things that has really been the biggest blessing in our lives. We love Chase Oaks, and we love that we're in a church that makes a difference in our community. We believe that we want to inspire others to find Christ, and we do that through just generous giving, and we do that in multiple different ways. I put a picture of this last week. Our Legacy staff served at our local good pantry, and I think I threw a picture of our staff here. Instead of doing our monthly staff meeting, we decided we wanted to go serve. And if you don't know, if maybe you're not from here or maybe you're kind of new, we just took over a pantry in Richardson that was in need. There needed to be some change of ownership. And so we decided, we're gonna take this over. It was like a overnight kind of thing. And it's been a really cool experience to go serve at that. And so if you're looking for something to do as a family, I know when you have change like that, it's volunteer led, right? You have to have a lot of volunteers run this. So if you and your family want something to do this holiday season, go check that out. It is such an awesome place to go serve, and there's a lot of people that are being fed at that pantry. So be on the lookout for that. But I am thankful. I'm thankful for Thanksgiving. I got to host for the first time at my house, which was really cool. And that Thanksgiving table after the Thanksgiving meal, that's always like the messiest the table will be all year. You know what I'm saying? And it's usually because you pull up as many chairs, right? There's chairs that are fitting between chairs that shouldn't be there. And you've got arms hitting each other. There's just food everywhere. The stove is a mess. The sink is a mess. Everything is just messy, right? And as a father of a toddler and a baby, now everything's even more messy. Like I had no idea what messy was until we had kids. And I've accepted the fact, okay, I'm gonna be cleaning for a large portion of the rest of my life. I'm fine with that. I can accept that. But I'm really hopeful this holiday season. I don't know about you. I just feel like this year, I feel like a lot of hope. It's been a lot of weird holidays the last few years. It's just been a really weird season. And I'm really hopeful this year, and I'm really excited. And I just started noticing these last few years, aside from our tables and our kids and the messes that are around us, we're kind of a mess too, right? As adults. I mean, I work with teenagers, and listen, teenagers are a mess. We know that, all right? We all know that. We were a mess when we were teenagers, but even as adults, we're kind of messy. We're messy with our relationships. We mess those up a lot. We mess up decisions in our life. We're just a messy people. And I think I love doing student ministry. I love the next generation, because what greater gift can you give someone to walk alongside them in their mess? And, I think Jesus did that a lot. I think we are called to do that. A couple weeks ago, as I was kind of prepping for this message to give to you, Pastor Jeff asked a question. He was giving us a message about how do we rebrand Christianity to a generation that has a really skewed view of what following Christ looks like, what a Christian is. And he asked this question. He said, how much is the faith of the next generation worth? And that really stuck with me as someone who loves and cares about the next generation. I believe in the next generation. I think the next generation is gonna be amazing. They already are, and they're gonna do some amazing things. And if you don't know, the trend for the next generation is not going towards Christianity. It's not trending towards following Christ or being a believer. It's actually going the other way. We are in a post-Christian society now. And I believe that it doesn't lie in the hands of the next generation to fix this. I believe it lies in our hands. I think it's us. I think it's all of us. I think it's all the generations before the next generation, because regardless of what the next generation believes, we need the generations before us. I believe that's godly. We need all of the generations before us. And so how much is the faith of the next generation worth? I think it's worth everything. We pass it on to the next generation. And I've been in student ministry for 10 years, y'all. That is a long time to be putting up with teenagers, you know what I'm saying? And I'd probably argue they put up with me, but it's a long time. And there's one thing that I've noticed in 10 years of student ministry, and it's that the biggest influencers in their life are parents. The numbers say so. I mean, you can go that number of hours a child is with their parent. You can go, because essentially what parenting is caring for one another. It is taking care of someone else. That's what parenting is. And I believe that all of us have to parent at times. So if I was gonna give a message for 1 week to you, I would wanna give you some encouragements of how to parent, all right? Because everyone has to parent at times. We all do. I know this because think about a friend group you've ever been in, all right? And in a friend group, there's always that person that's, they're taking care of someone else in the group, right? They're making sure that something was said, or maybe they're the one that has to reel the group back in when you're about to make a really bad decision. You know what I'm saying? This is always the blank of the group, right? This is the mom of the group. This is the dad of the group. And we all have those people in our groups, and sometimes those interchange and those move around because we all have to parent. And maybe you have to sub influence for parent today, right? Maybe you're not gonna be hear me out. Maybe you're not gonna be a biological parent. Maybe that's not in your story. Maybe you're single right now and that's just not even in your your brain right now. But I believe that we all will have to parent and we all have to influence, right? And I think we also have a responsibility to take care of those around us. Jesus told us this. When someone asked Jesus, what's the best thing you can do to follow God? He was like, all right, 2 things. In Matthew 22, he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And if by definition our neighbor is anyone around us, then I think it's our responsibility to take care of everybody around us. And the next generation, they're right behind us. And we need to take care of them. We need to bring them up, all of us. So I want to give you some encouragements today. And before I do that, I think we need to start with humility. Every great leader, I've been around a lot of amazing leaders, just being in ministry and getting to meet a lot of amazing leaders. And I've seen a lot of really amazing parents in 10 years. And one of those commonalities that I've seen in all of them is the fact that they are humble. They're willing to learn and grow. They're always constantly humble before the Lord and before each other. Humility, I think, is what we need to start with. So I'm gonna ask you today to just humble yourselves, lean into what God might be trying to tell you today. Maybe he's trying to just teach you something as you're going into this new season, whether that's the holiday season, whether that's you're about to have children, or maybe your children are starting to change into a different season. I'm asking you to lean in. And so this kind of takes me into my first encouragement, which is be willing to change and adapt. We have to be willing to change. We should not be stuck in our ways. I know that one of my pastors and mentors who I really look up to, he kind of modeled this for me. And he has teenagers, and he was kind of just sharing with what he had to go through having teenagers. And he was explaining that, from the like when your kids are toddlers and on up, you're basically a teacher, right? Every parent knows this. You're teaching your kids everything. You're teaching them how to walk. You're teaching them, how to eat. You're teaching them what not to eat. You're teaching them what not to eat. I mean, my goodness, quit putting that in your mouth, right? Like, these are things that we're constantly teaching our kids. And as we do this, there's something that happens along the way. And y'all will know what I'm talking about. Something happens with our cute little kids. All of a sudden, they start rolling their eyes at us. You know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden, they don't want us just to solve their problem, right? Sometimes they just want us to listen and hear because they want to solve their problems. They want to be independent. That's part of parenting, right? It's walking alongside. And he was just explaining that he had to change from maybe this teacher mindset to a consultant mindset, where maybe he just needs to listen and maybe give advice whenever he's asked. And he didn't change parenting. He didn't stop, creating boundaries. He didn't stop doing the things that are important that you do as a parent, you take care. But he was willing to learn and change and adapt how he communicated so that his teens would hear him, and so that maybe they would, he would also hear them and they would hear him. And I thought that was just a really humble, great way to adapt. So I want to look at a guy who had to do this a lot. He had to parent a lot, and his name is Moses, right? We all know Moses. Maybe you've heard about him. He's a pretty famous dude, and he had to parent a ton. He had people that, they were constantly rebelling. They were fighting against each other. They were arguing with each other. They were complaining. Like, he was the ultimate parent, to a lot of people, all right? And so we're gonna be looking in Deuteronomy today, and he's gonna give some parenting advice. And I know he's giving parenting advice because if you look at verse 2, he says this. He says, remember today that your children were not the ones who saw and experienced the discipline of the Lord your God. All right, so let me give you a little context to why he's saying this. He's sitting these leaders and parents down of the Israelite people, and they're getting ready to go to a really tough season, all right? It's kind of like I picture, when you sit your family down and a really tough season's about to come in, and I'm picturing dad's like, all right, guys, listen, mom's got a lot going on right now, okay? Don't do that thing that sets her off. You know what you did last week? Don't do that, okay? We got to stick together here, all right? I'm picturing him, he's giving this advice to these parents, and maybe not quite like that, but he's telling them, he says, he's telling them this because the generation that's coming up did not see the miracles that God performed in front of them. And in verses 2-7, he's very specific. He talks about how God brought them out of slavery in Egypt and how God had parted the Red Sea so they could escape the enemy. He talks about very specifically these reminders of what God had done. And he even goes in verse 13, this is the big piece of advice, all right? This is advice that even Jesus references when he comes around way, way, way later in the story, okay? And it's this, it says in verse 13, so if you faithfully obey the commands I'm giving you today, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. He goes on to explain that, God will take care of us. We're gonna go in God's will and we're gonna be okay. Now, he also has reminded them of the good things that they had seen God do and that they had done. But he also reminds them of some things and mistakes that they had made. God rectified the situation and fixed everything. But I think Moses is very specific for a reason. I believe, and you may have heard this saying, that leaders are repeaters. And if we're gonna help the next generation, I think this is huge. And Moses knows this. For whatever reason, we have to hear something over and over and over again in order for us to remember it, right? There's probably some wives in here that are nudging their husbands, like, why do I have to repeat myself over and over, Evan, so that you can remember these things? I think that he needs to remind them specifically because they need to be able to share this information with the next generation. And I believe that's why we meet weekly. I think today we have to remember what God has done. We have to remember his grace and his mercy. We have to be reminded ourselves of all these things that he's done. And which kind of brings me to my next encouragement. In every change, right, as we're repeating and we're learning to change and adapt, I think in every season that changes, we need to check our priorities. And so I want to encourage you to check your priorities in every season. They're changing all the time, and they're happening all the time, right? Your kids, like when you're a father of a toddler or a baby, it's like something changes every 2 weeks. Like it's exhausting. That slows down, right? But there's always changes happening in our lives. We need to check our priorities in each season. Maybe if you're in your 20s and your 30s and you don't have kids, maybe checking your priorities is just asking the question like, what do I want my friends to say about me? Who do I want to be? What do I want to be known for? And if there's something that we can check all of our priorities back to, I believe it's in verse 13, right? It's the ultimate advice that he gives. It's to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. And so I think it's important for us to always check those priorities, go back to it. Maybe you're a young parent and you're up for a lot of long nights. Maybe your priorities is maybe you're spending some time with the Lord, in the middle of the night when you're just exhausted. Maybe as your kids get older, maybe it's modeling for them what you want your faith to be in your family, right? Maybe your kids are getting out of childhood and your kids will still need you. As a 30-year-old, as a 32-year-old, I still need my parents. Your children will never stop needing you. The next generation still needs us. And so as you're checking your priorities through all of these changes, my next encouragement is simply just embrace the mess, right? Life is messy. And I think that we just need to embrace the journey, embrace the mess that is life. I had a baseball coach. I played college baseball for 3 years. As you can tell by my tall physical stature that I was an intimidating force. I'm just kidding. I'm short. But I was basically just a pitcher that tried to throw ground balls. Okay, I'm left-handed, so that helps. But we had one of my favorite coaches, Coach Kelly. He sat us down, all of the freshmen, before the season started. And essentially from high school to college, the season in baseball gets considerably longer. And it's a very, it's a physically demanding season. It's very long, but it's also very mentally demanding. Because in baseball, it's a game of failure, right? You have a lot of streaks and you have a lot of slumps in baseball. And so what the really good players do is they extend their streaks and they shorten their slumps. And our coach sat us down. He said, before we get started with the season, I need all of you guys to just get ready to embrace the suck. All right, and we were like, what does that mean? But he said, you need to embrace the suck. It is a long season. It is a very hard season. You're gonna have some really good days, but you're gonna have some slumps. It's inevitable in baseball. And essentially what he was teaching us is we never get too high on our highs in baseball. You never get too low on your lows, because the last thing you wanna do in baseball when you're in a slump is you don't wanna press. That's what we call pressing, right? and you start swinging at things you shouldn't swing at. You start doing things you shouldn't do that you normally wouldn't do. We press, we get low, and we start getting into our own head, and we start doing things that it's that terrible, like that snowball effect. You just keep going down. So I think if we are going to help the next generation, if we're going to model something for the next generation, if we're going to live out all of our changes, I believe that we need to embrace the mess. Maybe when you're in your 20s and you're in that single time of life, I know for me, I wish I would have embraced the mess of life and just known that I'm in this season. You know, I didn't know where my spouse was. I didn't know who my spouse was. I was really just impatient. I was kind of looking for the next thing. I think if we embrace the mess, we live in the moment and we take advantage of the moment. And if we check our priorities, we know that, all right, well, how do I love the Lord my God with all my heart and with all my soul in this? In my 20s, I wish I would have probably served more with my friends. I wish I would have maybe had more intentional time with my friends and my faith. Maybe you're a young parent and you know you're just teaching your kids. You're gonna go through some hard times as a young parent, all right? Like it's a tough season, but you will make it through. And if you're an empty nester, can I just speak to our empty nesters for a second? Because I've thought about this. You know, I've kind of thought, man, I'm tired right now. Like my kids, in March, I'm about to be really tired, you know? And I kind of think like, man, when I become an empty nester, oh man, I can like sleep. And I know this is all probably not true, but you know, maybe there's that little idea of maybe I'll just coast a little, you know? Can I just say this? Empty nesters, you're not done. You are not done. Let me just encourage you, if anything, it's time for you to go. We need you empty nesters. You make the biggest difference. In 10 years of student ministry, some of the best small group leaders that I've ever seen have been empty nesters. You have a wisdom that only life can teach you. You have something to give the next generations. And I'm not saying, there's tons of areas to serve, okay? You can serve in kids, you can serve with teens, you can go serve at the local good pantry because you're gonna probably be working alongside someone in the next generation at some point. Maybe it's in your job. Who are you in your job with the next generations coming up and starting to enter into the workforce, right? You're not done. Your time is just beginning. As friends, I think if we do this, I think if we embrace the mess and we live in it, I think our friends will see that in us. I think they'll see God working in us. Because what happens when you live in it, right? When you check your priorities, when you're changing and adapting, inevitably God will start to mold us and God will start to change us. I believe our friends will see that. I believe our kids will see that and they'll start to model that. But it starts with us. And I think when we live in it, when we embrace it, my big thing for you today is I want to share one of my small group leaders, before I forget this, is she's a grandmother, and we were just kind of sharing some parenting advice, and I think she gets embrace the mess. And she said this, I'll never forget this advice. She said, not all good things are good, and not all bad things are bad. You can learn from all things in life. And I just thought that was so valuable when we talk about embracing the mess that is life. And so I want to encourage today, my last thing I want to encourage you with is I think when we live in it, we talk the talk. Because when we talk the talk, I think what that means, and let me say what it is not. It's not sitting your kids down or maybe the next generation and saying, all right, we're gonna have a family meeting and here's what it means to follow the Lord. Now listen, there may be a time or place for something like that, but there's nothing more intimidating than sitting across from your parent than like a family meeting for a teenager. If you want your teenagers to open up to you, let me just give you some youth pastor advice. Don't sit them in a couch across from you. They probably will like get super, super nervous. But I think when we talk the talk, we talk about what God is doing. Just like Moses did. We talk about the good things that God has done. We talk about the mistakes that we've made. We talk about how God is molding us and changing us. So I want to just reference Mandy Majors as an author. She wrote the book, Keeping Kids Safe in a Digital World. Well, before I get to this book, let me give you how do we do this, right? How do we teach our kids? How do we help the next generation, whatever season you're in, all right? I believe Moses gives us this in verse 19. And basically what he says is, teach them to your children. He's talking about all the ways, all the things that I'm teaching you. Teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. It's when we go. And I can tell you, like living in North Dallas, I go a lot, right? And the thing that I go in a lot is the car. We're in the car a lot. And I think there's a really cool thing that happens in the car, and I'll get that in a second, but Mandy Majors wrote a book called Keeping Kids Safe in a Digital World. And if you're just a parent, this is a great resource. It's an easy read. Our kids, right, our next generation, they're dealing with things that we never had to deal with. And they're learning, and they essentially, Mandy Majors came and talked to our parents a few months ago now. And she was just telling our parents, you know, our kids they're gonna be in the digital world, right? They are now they just are influxed with information everywhere. So they're learning the good and the bad and everything in between. And there's no sheltering them from this, because most likely they have a friend who's also living in this world. But I think if you just if you hear some of the things that she says, it's amazing. I think what she kind of gets across the most is our kids need someone to walk alongside them in the mess. That's what we need the most. We need to walk alongside our next generation, because they have a lot to deal with. And so here's what talking the talk is, and here's what talking the talk is not. Mandy Majors, she gave an example of when kids ask the best questions, always happens in the car. Because if you think about it, when you're in the car, the driver's usually facing the other direction from you. It's not an intimidating situation. You can ask those questions that you've always wanted to ask. You can find out maybe a question that you normally may not ask your parent, or here's the deal. I remember some of my best conversations in high school and college happened in the vehicle with me and some friends. And my last encouragement I want to give you is, I don't think our kids necessarily need to be talked to all the time. I think they need to hear us talk about what God is doing in our lives. And talking the talk is not saying one thing and doing the other. Let me just put that out there, because I hope and pray that you're living it and you're allowing God, and you're honest whenever you make mistakes before God and before your family. I learned more from my dad apologizing to me than I ever had him telling me something. I learned a lot about humility and admitting my mistakes when my dad would apologize to me. I'll give one last example of why I think the car is a huge place for us to take advantage of for our next generation. We went on a mission trip to Tennessee a couple years ago, and at the end of the day, we shared highlights. And one of our teens' highlights for the day, to my surprise, was riding in the van all day. Their highlight was listening to a leader and myself just talk about our faith in the front seat. We were just kind of shooting the breeze. I wasn't being student pastor of the year, Mr. Intentional, like I know everybody's listening in the back seat. We were just talking, and we were talking about life and our faith. And that was their highlight, because I think there's some ears listening. Teens have an amazing way of listening when you think they're not listening. The next generation is listening to us. And I think we can really, if we just truly change and adapt, check our priorities, if we talk the talk, I think we can start moving the needle and help our next generation see who Christ is in our lives. We have a sticker that we're gonna give out as you walk out, maybe one per vehicle, something like that as you kind of walk out the doors. It says talk the talk on it. And I just wanna encourage you, you're free to grab one on your way out, and maybe you put it somewhere for that constant reminder. Maybe you stick it in the bottom left corner of your windshield. It's not meant to like stick out, it's meant to be a reminder for you that when you see it, I wanna talk the talk. I wanna be reminded that there are people listening. Maybe it's you and a friend talking and someone's in the back seat and you're just having a discussion. And maybe it's not in your face, maybe it's not over spiritual, but it's just a talk about what God's doing in your life. I think if we truly start doing this, and when we are just having those conversations about what God is doing in our lives, I think our next generation, our kids, I think they're gonna hear that. I think they're gonna see that most of all because we're gonna be molded and changed in Christ. We're gonna get ready to sing a song called Firm Foundation. And I just pray that as you are listening to the one that we point everyone back to is Christ. I mean, he changed my life years ago. He can change your life. He can change your kid's life. He can change everyone. That's who we put our hope in because he will not fail you. I can promise you that. In our next generation, whether you're a parent or you're single and you're just trying to help out your friends through life or yourself through decisions, remember who to put your firm foundation into and see what God is leaning you into in this next season of life. Let's pray. God, I just want to lift up all of our teenagers, all of our preteens, all of this next generation that is starting to come up behind us. Lord, they're dealing with a lot. We are dealing with a lot in this world, but Jesus, there's one thing that never changes, and that's you. God, you are the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And we know we can rely on you. We know we can lean on you. And I just pray for every single person here that needs to parent, every single person here that needs to influence, every single person here that needs to just help someone along, that they would see those moments, they would capture those moments, that we can share the goodness that you are in our life, God. Be with us in this holiday season and guide us as families, as friends, whoever we are, Lord. In your heavenly name, I pray. Amen.